Hello, I'm Simon Whistler. You're watching the Today I Found Out YouTube channel. 62, broke, and living in his car. This is the story of Colonel Sanders and the founding of the KFC empire. Kentucky Colonel is the highest honor that can be bestowed by the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Incidentally, if you're interested why Colonel is pronounced the way it is despite its spelling, we've got a video on that. You can find it in the description below. To be named a colonel in Kentucky is to be recognized for outstanding service to community, state, and nation. The sitting governor of Kentucky or the Secretary of State of Kentucky are the only ones who can bestow such an honor onto an individual. These colonels are Kentucky's ambassadors of goodwill and fellowship around the world and are people from all walks of life. Luminaries such as Muhammad Ali, Jim Beam, Fred Astaire, Betty White, and Winston Churchill are among the eclectic mix of people who have been named a Kentucky colonel. But there was one person who took the honor of colonel, something he was actually awarded twice, and made it an essential part of his identity: the colorful, eccentric founder of the Kentucky Fried Chicken empire, Colonel Sanders, who incidentally didn't manage to create that empire until after the age when many people are contemplating retirement. He didn't really have that luxury at the time, being just about flat broke at the age of 62. If the only way to succeed is through failure, Harlan Sanders was seemingly destined for success. Born September 9, 1890 in Henryville, Indiana, Harlan had a tough childhood. His father passed away when he was 6, and his mother had to work several jobs to make ends meet. So he was tasked with looking after his 2 younger siblings and taking care of the home, which included cooking. It was said that before the age of 10, Harlan had mastered several regional dishes. Needing to help provide for the family, he entered the workforce at the age of 10 as a farmhand, making $2 a month. That's about $55 today. At 15, he was working on a streetcar, taking fares and making change. When he was 16, he went looking for an adventure and forged documents saying he was of age to enter the army. He did just that and got sent to Cuba, where he was honorably discharged after only 3 months. He made his way to Alabama, and over the next 20+ years, he worked at a variety of jobs, including railroad worker, insurance salesman, country lawyer, where he was fired after assaulting his own client, Ohio River steamboat ferry operator, a tire salesman, and secretary to the Chamber of Commerce in Columbus, Indiana. For 6 years, he was the operator of a gas station, his longest tenured job before it was closed down due to the Great Depression. In 1930, at the age of 40, already broke and having failed several times in the workforce, he made his way to Corbin, Kentucky, where the Shell Oil Company agreed to allow him and his family to live at a recently built gas station. In exchange, a large percentage of sales was to be given back to Shell. As Sanders, not yet a colonel, said himself in his autobiography, "Corbin was the only place I knew I could start again without any money, a place where business would be driving by my door 24 hours a day." He was proud of his gas station, so proud in fact that when challenged by a neighboring gas station worker owned by Standard Oil, a shootout occurred. Sanders, guns blazing, emerged victorious. Despite the fact that he'd shot the neighboring gas station worker, no charges were filed as the other man had shot first. Motorists passed through his station day and night, usually hungry. They would ask Sanders for recommendations, but soon he realized he should be the one providing the food for the hungry travelers. So he cooked. He didn't have a restaurant, so at first diners ate at his dining room table with his family. Soon, people from across the state came to visit solely for the hearty meal of steak, country ham, eggs, biscuits, and yes, fried chicken. Sanders called it home meal replacement, selling complete meals to busy, traveling, time-strapped families. He advertised it as a Sunday dinner 7 days a week. His gas station/cafe was doing so well that he bought out the motel across the street and turned it into a 142-seat restaurant. Orders, especially for his chicken, piled up. Sanders needed to find a way to cook faster. That's when he discovered a newfangled thing called a pressure cooker at a local hardware store. In his autobiography, Sanders admitted that, contrary to what you may have heard elsewhere, he didn't invent the pressure cooker, simply adapted it to fry a lot of chicken quickly. Sanders' Corton Cafe became one of the most popular stops in Kentucky. For his fried chicken efforts in 1935, the governor of Kentucky, Ruby Laffin, quite a character in his own right, bestowed Harlan Sanders the title of colonel in recognition of his contributions to the state's cuisine. He would commonly be called Colonel Sanders from that point forward. Even after receiving that distinction, Colonel Sanders still had trouble keeping his business afloat. A fire in 1939 burned down the entire restaurant, but he rebuilt it. A year later, along with a new motor court, Sanders Court and Cafe was back on its feet and selling chicken like gangbusters to travelers making their way on US 25, a major north-south route in America. Sanders was so well liked and well respected that when he lost his official colonel certificate, the state governor, Lawrence Weatherby, just decided to recommission him in 1950, so in truth, he was colonel twice over. In the 1950s, the route of the new Interstate 70 was announced. Unfortunately, unlike US 25, it did not swing by Sanders Court and Cafe. Colonel Sanders was once again out of luck, but he realized that his future wasn't tied to one restaurant, but many of them selling his chicken. So at the age of 62, he sold his restaurant and motor court, barely making enough money to pay off his bills and taxes, and hit the road with his recipe and pressure cooker. He drove from town to town, diner to diner, pleading with owners to use his delicious chicken recipe and give him a nickel commission on each piece sold. He slept in his car and was nearly broke. Again. The first to accept Sanders' offer was Pete Harmon, owner of the Dewdrop Inn in Salt Lake City, Utah. With a handshake agreement in 1952, Salt Lake City became the first city with a Kentucky Fried Chicken franchise. By 1959, Sanders had made over 200 such deals in the US and Canada. It was also around this time when Colonel Sanders began dressing the part too. From the late 1950s until his death in 1980, Sanders wore a white suit, a string tie, and a snow-white goatee. It was said that he had two suits, one that was heavy wool for the winter and one that was a light cotton for the summer. Colonel Sanders was finally a permanent success. He sold the company in 1964 for $2 million, which is about $15 million today, but stayed on as a spokesman and the face of Kentucky Fried Chicken. He traveled across the country and the world, talking chicken until the day he died at the age of 90 in 1980. He's buried in Louisville, Kentucky, with a bust and an epitaph reading, "Founder of Kentucky Fried Chicken Empire," marking the spot. Bonus fact: in Japanese professional baseball, one team was, and some say still is, under a curse called Curse of the Colonel. The team is the Hanshin Tigers, the Boston Red Sox of the Nippon League. After winning the Japan Series title in 1985, the fans went out celebrating the Tigers. During the course of the celebration, some of them threw a plastic statue of Colonel Sanders into a river. Why did they do this? Fans of the Tigers who resembled the players jumped off a bridge after each Tiger player's name was called out. The problem was that none of the Japanese fans resembled American Randy Bass, who had played for the Tigers that season. So the revelers simply grabbed the statue of the Colonel outside a KFC and tossed it into the river. Directly after that, the Tigers suffered 18 consecutive losing seasons. The streak finally ended when the Tigers made it all the way to the Japan Series once again in 2003, but ultimately lost, leading some to claim the curse was still in place. Luckily for the fans of the Tigers, in 2009 the original statue was recovered from the river, hopefully breaking the curse. Although they still haven't won the Japan Series since that 1985 season. Perhaps they should post statues of Ronald McDonald outside the entrances to their home stadium to keep the Colonel from interfering in the games. So I really hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Also, over there on the right, a couple of other videos you might enjoy if you enjoyed this one. And thank you for watching.